Hey everyone, welcome to another wonderful new episode of Wives Wine Down. Yes, welcome. Happy Wednesday. It is that time to grab a glass, whether it's wine, juice, water, tea. Somebody had chamomile tea last week. So whatever's your fancy, grab your glass, grab your girls, and let's get ready for some great, wonderful girl chat and some girl time. Hey ladies, I see you all in there. Hey, Dr. Loree, I'm going to have you on in just a second. Listen, she's on it. Yes, I love it. Hey, Koya. Hey, Lexi. Hey, J-Bell. And hey, Tiana. That's my girl. Hey, girl. I'm so happy to see you all. Well, even though I can't physically see you all, but you all know what I mean. Welcome. Thank you all so much for joining tonight. This is Wives Wine Down. If you are new to Wives Wine Down, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. If this is your first time, welcome. And if you have been here since day one, y'all know who y'all are. I love y'all to pieces. And the support has been just tremendous. And I'm so thankful for this platform. I cannot do it without you all and my special guests. And I'm just so thankful how God is moving in all of this. Hey, Uniquely Knitted. I am your host, Shonda White, and I have been married for 12 years now. And I remember when I first got married, I was a little hesitant about I didn't really know what that meant to be a wife or what that all entailed. It's okay, now I got a man and I'm married. What does that mean? And even before I got married. And so I created this outlet because I wanted women, whether single, whether married, engaged, if you're thinking about getting married, I wanted to create this outlet so that we could have a comfortable space to talk about and pull back the curtain behind marriage and just really get real about what it takes to not just get married, but what it takes to stay married. And so I am really big on transparency and keeping it real. And I just wanted to create that outlet so that we could have fun and we could also talk about serious issues because things happen in marriage. And so I wanted to create that platform to make other women feel comfortable because I know I didn't feel as comfortable when I was married the first year. I was like, is this my marriage crazy? What's going on? And then I realized, other married couples go through this. It's just nobody's talking about it. So I am here to talk about it and to make you all feel comfortable no matter how long you've been married. And even if you are single and you're thinking about being married or you aspire to be married, this is that platform for you. And just a few housekeeping things. The replay will be available on IGTV. And we just have one more show next week before we wrap this season and before we wrap the new year. So make sure if you haven't caught up, you can catch up on the previous episodes on my IGTV. We have had some phenomenal guests and I'm so excited even about tonight's guest. I know I've been praying all day because I just know what this woman has done for me already. So and just thank you all. So without further ado, let me bring on our special guest tonight. And of course, you all can always drop your questions in the chat. Let's see. Oh, it went away. Okay. I don't know what happened. Dr. Loree, if you don't mind, will you send a request again? If you don't see it, you may have to hop out and then hop back in. But for some reason, there it goes. Yeah, boom. She's on it. Yeah. Hey, ladies. Hey, Renita. Hey, Margie. Hey, TJ Rags and Aaliyah.
Hello.
Hey, Dr. Loree. Yes.
How are you?
You gotta get that light. Yes. You look so beautiful.
Oh my goodness. You know what? I had to do a little something. It's the end of the day. And, and I know we were having this wind down, but now I had to come special for you ladies because I've been looking forward to chatting with you and, so just freshening up a little bit.
Well, I so appreciate it. You look gorgeous. And I'm you have been looking forward to this. I have been looking forward to this. Before we even get started, before I introduce you to the people, I just want to personally and publicly thank you because my first acquaintance with you was actually on, we had Melissa Fredericks on here a while back. And on her episode of the Love Hour, I listened to your episode and I was like, who is this Dr. Loree and where has she been? You hit on so many things that touched my spirit. I was like, why is nobody saying this? That's exactly what I've been feeling. So when I heard that, I knew how much you personally blessed me. And I just had to, I was like, she has to come on Wives Wine Down. So thank you for your yes. And thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. It means a lot. It means a lot. You never know what it's like when you start talking about your story, and especially in the Black community where we just don't talk about this stuff. And, you know, and I'll get into a little bit more about my story a little bit later, but, you know, hearing that what I share helps somebody else, you know, is very healing for me. So thank you.
Yes, it is. And just to know that we're not alone, especially like you said, as Black women, that for me is like everything. So before we get into it, I want to introduce the people to you.
Okay.
So let me share with them who our wonderful guest is tonight. Dr. Loree Johnson is a licensed marriage and family therapist, which is LMFT, and coach in private practice with more than 25 years of experience as a clinician, educator, and clinical supervisor. Specializing in, and I'm like, 25 years, like, girl, you look good. Specializing in women's mental health and reproductive health, Dr. Johnson helps her clients overcome the emotional challenges that come with infertility, including pregnancy loss and emotional trauma. She also helps couples who have become divided by their fertility journey strengthen their connection. So everyone, clap it up in the chat and welcome Dr. Loree.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yay. And let me tell you, I was already getting messages. I mean, people were already pouring out their stories and their hearts. And they were like, we're so glad you're talking about this. We're so glad you're going to have her on. And I'm like, listen, I'm here for you all, and we're in this together. So
we're in this together.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, we need to talk about it. And, you know, talking about it helps reduce the stigma because there's so many of us that are dealing with this, and there's no shame in this. So
no shame. Exactly. How are you doing right now, especially with quarantine? How have you been doing?
No, thank you for asking. Kind of feel like a little bit of like Meghan Markle in that sense. You know, the therapist doesn't always get that question. You know, I'm maintaining. This is a hard time of year for me personally, and you know, just with some of the losses that I've experienced around this time, and the holidays are challenging, but also just professionally, you know, people are struggling, and in the fertility world, it's hard enough to begin with, and then on top of it, with COVID and how we're trying to, you know, deal with, are we locked down? Are we not? And, you know, when is this going to end? Are we going to get a vaccine? Are we going to take it? You know, I mean, all of that stuff. So, you know, I'm helping clients manage a lot of stress right now, which, you know, I'm feeling it, but I'm also putting some things in place to take care of myself too. So thank you for asking.
Listen, of course, I'm like you said, therapists need to be checked in on as well. And I think you've said it before, like even therapists need therapists. So
yes,
I think
absolutely.
It's always just honest. And I love to start there with just asking how my guests are doing, because it matters. Like, you know, and we've had people like, listen, I'm about to break down, but I'm gonna get through. And that's just honest, you know?
Absolutely. We just have to keep it real.
Yes, I love keeping it real. So you've been married for 8 years, and earlier in the fall, on your anniversary, I love when you wrote, when you say your vows, you can't predict what lies ahead, but you can feel proud about who you've chosen to walk with on your journey, which I loved. How did you and your husband meet, and what would you say you are the most proud of in terms of your marriage and you and your husband so far?
Yes. So my husband and I met a little later in life. I'm a late bloomer. We met in my mid-30s, and I had just finished my doctoral degree and getting licensed all in the same year, which I don't recommend doing. But then I started this year of yes before Shonda Rhimes wrote the book about it. And I just started, I started motorcycle riding actually. So I ride motorcycles. And my husband—
I missed that in my research.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. And Uniquely Knitted, I know I still owe you a picture of the motorcycle. So I know that they hopped on. But yes, so we met through a mutual motorcycle riding group, and that was just a huge part of our courtship. And so it just, being with my husband was just very easy. It was unexpected, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to roll with it. And, you know, and here I am 10 years later, 8 years married. Being with him has really felt like being, you know, just on a long-term kind of honeymoon. And so when I think about being on this infertility journey and this grief journey, which took up a lot of space in our relationship, having somebody really balance me and hold space in a way that I didn't know I needed was just beautiful and healing. And so I'm forever grateful for that, even though we've had our struggles, and we still do, just like every married couple. But I appreciate him so much more now. I appreciate that that steadiness that he brought before, where I was just kind of like, why are you like upset and like just all of that. But he has his own gifts, and so that's just a beautiful part of his spirit, that gentleness and that way that he shows that he cares, and he's very attuned even when you don't think that he is. He's paying attention. And so it's like, yeah, so it gets me every time when I think about it. But I'm really blessed.
I see how you just light up just talking about it. Oh, and I love when you said being with my husband was easy, because like sometimes we miss that simple part. It's like someone once said before, I want a husband, not a headache. And it's like you want things to feel like you said, every day is not going to be perfect. You're going to have your ups and downs. But like with him, it felt easy. It felt natural. And so I love that you said that. Oh, that just touched my heart.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, I truly admire your strength and your transparency. What I've heard, obviously, on other interviews, and especially what I've seen on your page, and your journey, like through your own personal journey of infertility and loss, which I admire so much, because I'm like, here you are going through your own set of challenges, but you're still pouring out. I mean, obviously it's part of your career, but at the same time, that still takes a lot. You could easily just be like, I need to take a break, but you're still feeding into others, which I love. And so for those who may not be familiar, will you just share with us how you went from, helping other women on their journey to then transitioning to having to like help yourself through your own journey with infertility and loss?
Absolutely. It was a pretty complicated kind of journey in a sense. I started, when my husband and I first started, when we first started dating, I was already working with women in the infertility community a little bit, but I wasn't fully in it the way that I became once I had my second pregnancy loss. So it was very interesting to first start to work with women who were struggling with pregnancy loss, or trying to get pregnant, and so I had to do a lot of research, and but being in the infertility community really shifted how I practiced. And so it was a lot in the sense that I did step away for a bit, because it was a little bit intense for me clinically. I had, for those of you who don't know, after my husband and I, we dated for a couple of years, got married, never really worried about getting pregnant, and thought I was just going to get pregnant super easily. I, saw people, just, oh, you know what? Yeah. 36, no big deal. 40, okay, second kid, So I naively thought that was going to be my path. And even though I was working with women who were struggling, in our community, I kept getting those messages that, fertility issues don't impact us. What are you talking about? So that was something that was very subtle. That was, that I remember hearing, that I think really colored my journey. And it's one of the reasons why I speak out about it right now, because it's a huge myth that was still getting fed to me, probably about 4 years into my journey. So I, when my husband and I got married, had my first miscarriage about 6 months into our marriage, took some time off to heal. I also have fibroids. I deal with fibroids, and I've had 2 surgeries for, So, yeah.
I see you.
Okay. And we know that they're no joke. And so, had a second surgery to deal with those, then got pregnant with our son, Xavier. Dealt with some pretty intense anxiety with that second pregnancy, thought everything was okay. And then I got the dreaded call, like right as I was rounding out my first trimester, that, there was an issue with the baby. So that was like the second loss. And that really thrust me into fertility, grief, and trying to understand that. And as my therapist is trying to guide me through, and, and I'm sorry, us therapists, we go to therapy and we struggle just like everybody else.
Yeah. That's honest. That's real.
My therapist is like, Loree, you need to, it's humbling. And I'm like, I don't like it. And she's like, it's okay. You don't have to. And I mean, I was pouting, I was angry. I was going through all of those feelings that are just so normal. And so but my grief process with Xavier was actually shortened because of my age at the time. And they said, you know what, you need to go right to IVF. And so, of course, IVF was never easy. I did, probably 5 different protocols, and rounds of not 5 different protocols, 5 rounds of mini IVFs to get to a point where we had 2 transfers with 1 chemical pregnancy. And then, you know, of course that ended relatively quickly. And then after that, it was like, okay, I'm done with this. I just need a break. And found out that, you know, going through another battery of tests, because I'm like, we're going to just try naturally for a little bit. And even though they were like, well, you know what, because of your age, it's not going to happen. I had found out I had like 1 blocked tube, and then, you know, on one side, and then a partially blocked tube on the second. And then I got pregnant miraculously. So I was like, oh my goodness. So I had these really interesting experiences that kept, you know, that just made it so tricky to figure out, okay, well, what's happening? Why is this happening? What does this mean for me? And so after that particular loss, I really just kind of said, you know what, I needed to take a step back, you know, in earnest from the community, and, you know, just kind of focus on some of my clients. And I was still working with some women in, you know, specifically in infertility, but the more that I did some research too about what was happening with women of color, in particular with Black women, you know, that's when it's like my eyes kind of opened in a way. Wow. And so I kind of rounded a corner a couple of years later, and kind of made my reintroduction on Instagram and social media, where I felt more comfortable talking about it, because for the longest time I never really said my son's name in public. You know, only 2 people knew what his name was up until, you know, a few months ago. So this has been a healing process for me along the way, because of my own experiences, but also seeing what sharing has done for other women, and really learning that, you know what, no, we're twice as likely to have issues with fertility than our white counterparts, which was the very opposite of what I was taught. So yeah, so that's a little bit about my journey, maybe a little bit more information than what some people wanted to know, but it truly informs how I am, because I'm not just an infertility therapist or a grief therapist. I am somebody who is living this and who has lived it, and is on what I call the other side, which hasn't necessarily translated into parenthood, but it has translated into managing and living and thriving in a way that I didn't even imagine, you know. So that's how dark it felt. And so I get that darkness when I talk about it.
That is just so courageous of you, because even when you said his name, Xavier, I was like, because based on what I've researched and read about, you know, that and loss, it's like sometimes that's hard to get to. So to know that you've at least gotten to that step, I'm like, wow, that is just so courageous of you. And I know, I'm like, that wasn't too much at all. Like, that's your story, that's your truth, and someone tonight, or when they watch the replay, like, somebody needs to hear that story, even if it's just to say, I'm not alone, and like, I'm with you. So like somebody just said, Lauren said, thank you so much for sharing. And because that's not easy. I know that, like, with the holiday season, it's here, and you just mentioned that how it can be triggering for you. And it can be triggering, especially if you're around family and friends. And on your page, you share some great tips for like identifying and managing those, and sometimes even avoiding those triggers. Will you share a few of those, and like why it's important to create those boundaries, even, you know, within your own experience, and what that looks like, and why that's important to do that, or how to, like, you know, identify some of those triggers?
So first of all, triggers are these emotional landmines, right? There's some that we can predict that will set us off, you know, like time of year, social media, seeing certain posts about kids, certain movies that people like to watch around this time, family events that are very child focused. Also, this is a very popular time for pregnancy announcements, and everybody is showing their, you know, their ultrasounds and stuff, which so happy for them. Yeah, it's just sad for those of us who, you know, who are still longing, you know, who are still yearning, or still healing from the sadness around that not being a reality. So I think it's important to prepare for what you can, and also prepare for the unexpected. So the things that you can expect, like the family events, you know, intrusive questions that people might ask about, you know, where are you in your fertility journey? It's like, once you know, it's like you really have to do some thinking about who's going to be there, what questions are going to be asked, and then start to prepare some responses. And I've gotten really good at deflecting, or if somebody asks, well, when are you all doing this? And I'm like, you know what, how is so and so, and I will just flip it right on. Well, you didn't answer. I know I didn't, but it took me some time to get there.
Yes.
And I feel a little bit more presence in, I've learned and feel very good about saying no, and knowing that no is a complete sentence, that I'm not going to talk about it. And if you want to press it, then we can go there, but I don't think you want, but so it's really, kind of honoring what your boundary is, and being okay with what you can talk about, knowing your capacity ahead of time. Now, for the unexpected triggers, I always think it's important to kind of pivot. And I talk about that a little bit, or I know I have before. And pivoting to me means like knowing that you have an exit strategy. So if you're, like right now, COVID has affected how we're getting together, so that can handle certain social situations. But it still might mean you're on a call and there's an announcement or what have you, and you just might, feel overwhelmed with emotion, because that's usually what's happening when you're triggered. Your body's having this physiological reaction in relationship to the emotion. And it means you need to kind of go in another direction. So it means, hold on, I'll be right back. Or, I'm going to take 5, let me call you right back. Or, I need to hop off this call. And, it can just mean you need to remove yourself from the situation and be okay with that. Or it means you don't even show up to begin with, because you can't handle the family interactions or what that's going to mean. And so also being okay with that, because boundaries are really about self-protection. When we can't expect other people to know what our boundaries are, we have to let them know. So that's kind of what I like to kind of encourage people to do. It's like know that you can plan for so much, but then there's still going to be some things that are unexpected. And that doesn't mean that you did something wrong in terms of your planning. It just means that's just life.
That's so good. And I actually realized that I used your pivot strategy unknowingly just a few weeks ago, because I feel like all of my coworkers are pregnant and expecting, which is beautiful, but it can be it triggers me even more than I realized. And someone had shared we were having a sip and see for our beautiful adoption that took place, which is something that has come up in my household as well. And it did kind of trigger me. And I was like, I could like feel the tears like welling up. And I was like, what's wrong with me? And I just kind of like slid my little camera thing and like turned my camera off and just had a moment to pull myself together.
Yes.
And then came back when I was ready. And I'm like, I didn't even realize that like that was triggering me, or that I was using like the pivot. I just was like, I don't want them to see me like getting emotional.
Yes, absolutely. It's recognizing that emotion that wells up. And like you said, you're happy for them, but it also it still resonates deeply in a vulnerability that you have, and you have to tend to it. Your body's letting you know what you need. So it's like, and if you're out and about, because let's face it too, we all love Target or Walmart or whatever. It's like, and avoiding the aisles that have all the kids stuff, on it. And so this holiday, Christmas, it's not all about kids, but it's so kids, centered. And so being really protective about what you consume is important, whether it's how you go to the store or just like you said, like at work or with other social situations.
That's really good. Oh, I'm taking notes. I'm definitely gonna remember that. I love how I want to shift to talking about getting to the other side. And I love how you said you feel like you're on the other side. And there was this beautiful passage that you posted on your page, and you said you can still thrive when the perfect ending you envision doesn't unfold like you expected. My ending hasn't been written yet, but getting to the other side is not just about becoming a parent. Learning to thrive in the face of grief and infertility is rewarding too. And I just thought that was so beautiful. It applies to infertility, loss, grief, and so many areas of our lives. Talk to us about how you went from merely surviving to like thriving within your journey of infertility and loss. How did you get to that other side, you feel like?
Yeah, when I think about where I was and that darkness and, you know, crying every day, you know, after Xavier's loss and still showing up for clients at work. It was dark. And so there was, well, one thing I learned was the importance of having someone hold space for me and having to piece that together. And so because I was dealing with the pregnancy loss as a therapist, I was so blessed to find other therapists actually who had gone through pregnancy losses in the same way. Their children had chromosomal issues. They had to make heartbreaking decisions like I did, you know, and had gone through they'd walked that walk. And so, and I just, you know, so it just felt like a unicorn. So having that network or that tribe for me was just as helpful as having my own therapist. And I think it was just not expecting myself to be further along than where I was. And that's hard, you know, because I always say you don't have to like grieving. Nobody wants to feel bad all the time, you know. Right. I get tired of it too, you know. And you're just like, really, can't I just be over, you know, just done with this? And so it doesn't mean that you know, the fact that you're dealing with this heaviness, you know, it's just your body's way of processing, and you know, and you had a lot invested in a particular outcome, and so you have to give yourself that space. So learning not to get too far ahead of myself was key. And also I've been very clear, I love to travel. My husband and I you know, just really were able to use that as an outlet. And he, again, this is where he was just so beautiful in that, you know, if I wanted to take a trip, no matter how off the beaten path it was, he was like, okay. And through that, it was just so nice to have a sense of identity outside of pregnancy loss.
Yes.
You know? And that's the part that, you know, you can get, it can be so all consuming, you know, this fertility, pregnancy loss, grief stuff. It can overwhelm you. And I think that I just also made sure, even though I didn't feel like it, there were just times where I just had some elements in place that kind of forced me to make sure that I stayed connected to life outside of fertility stuff. So looking forward to a trip and then having an amazing experience where, you know, and if I were in a different country, you know, just interacting with different culture, it definitely helped me feel like there was more than, you know, than just being a mom. And being a mom is important, don't get me wrong. It was just like, wow, you know what? I could feel joy again. And just even the simple fact of feeling joy and having space for, and knowing that joy and pain could coexist was just another light bulb moment for me. Now, I always tell people too, like, you know, there's always sadness, you know, I'm sad right now. But I'm also incredibly happy, you know, and that's the weird juxtaposition of what this journey teaches you, is that both can coexist. And so that to me also is a part of building resilience and knowing that that is a skill that you build over time. And we all have it. We all have that capability to do that. So,
that's beautiful. Someone else said grieving and thriving can coexist. Like, that's 100% true. And I just love when you said that there's more to life than just being a mom. Like, you found your identity outside of that, because it can be overwhelming. It can, people can make you feel as if like you're less of a woman because you don't have children, or because, like, I don't even like saying my fertility sometimes, because I'm like, I don't even want to own it. I mean, I own that there are things, but I'm like, there's nothing wrong with me per se. So it's like, I even struggle with the word sometimes. I don't know if that's denial or whatever. I'm like, I'm aware of what it is, but it's like, I'm not going to give you all that power. Like,
and you know what though? I really identify with that, Shonda, because there are people who will refer to themselves as infertiles, and I get why they do it, and I think that's beautiful for them, because it helps them process in a way that they need to. But that doesn't actually resonate for me. Because I don't believe that infertility defines you. It can be defining in some respects. I believe how you handle things define you. You know, so whatever adversity you're experiencing, whether it's infertility, if it's grief or what have you, how you handle it defines you, and not, the fact that, okay, you're having trouble carrying, getting pregnant or carrying a baby or something. So I totally identify with that. But I respect, that other women want to.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's so beautiful, Dr. Loree. Oh, it's so beautiful. I'm like, I feel like you see me and I see you. I just love this. You've stated before that the reality is that Black women are more likely to experience infertility issues than our white counterparts, yet 50% less likely to seek help, which unfortunately I was not surprised to see that, because I know how we do as Black women. I mean, I just started seeking help like last year, and I'm like, finally, let me get my life together. Yes. But I know you've talked about finding your infertility tribe and how much of a blessing they were to you. And what other ways do you recommend women and even men seek help when it comes to these types of things?
So first of all, when you're having issues around fertility, I think it's important to make sure that you get information and know what your numbers are, so to speak.
Yes.
Get a hormonal panel done. They're just some quick and easy tests that just give you an idea of where you are, that I think can go a long way. Now, also, because, we're Black women, we do experience fibroids, at a greater, we do have some other issues that impact our fertility more so than our white counterparts. And fibroids is one of them,
We had a whole episode on it.
Did you? Yes.
Yes. But yes, sister,
so it's knowing, it's having that basic information, but also, making sure that you have access to tools to manage your emotional reactions. And, I think one of the things that we're working on in the community, and what I'm doing as a therapist, is trying to communicate more with clinics. And I know there's a nonprofit that's on the call too right now, and that's doing a lot of great work around that. But it's when you get to the point of seeking treatment or even asking questions, it's like making sure that people are connected to, to therapy, and having a place to process what's coming up. And I know I wish that these fertility doctors, when they were doing consultations, it's like, hey, making sure, are you checking in with somebody about that? Now, the other thing that I see when people are asking for help is, let's face it, it's the women that are seeking, usually making the calls first, and for a variety of reasons, and men usually aren't. And so what that can do, and it sets up this power differential, or this dynamic where, we become the holders of all this information, and then the guys aren't necessarily taking as active a role in the process. And so I think it's important for men to kind of stay educated and know what's up, and not necessarily rely on the partners to do all of that for them. But I think there's a lot that people can do to promote their well-being, and, just having a balanced diet and exercise. I'm a big fan of meditation and prayer, because, let's be going through the fertility journey is stressful. So your central nervous system is really going to have a stress-like response, and it could help soothe that in ways. And so in addition to, just going up to therapy too. So I think there are multiple strategies that people could take in terms of seeking help at this point.
Yeah, I loved that one idea that I saw on your page about like visualizations and how that helps with meditation and stuff, which I didn't really think about. I think on your page was like a picture of a pineapple on a beach, and I love the beach. And I'm like, even looking at that, it was like, Calgon, take me away. So I love that you shared that as well. And I love what you said about the men, because that was something that like we talked about before, because like, and getting educated, I think, is just so important, because a lot of times we as women, we carry the burden. Even if it's not the female's issue, or even if there's no issue, it all falls on the woman. It's like we have to carry the burden. Even the test. I remember going to the fertility specialist, and I'm like, is that all he has to do? For me, it was like this whole, I had to go at least like 3 times. I think he maybe went once, and I'm sitting here like, y'all don't even have to do half the stuff we have to do, like just to get tested.
No,
so
just to get tested, they just have to go in a cup.
That's it.
And for them, it could even be enjoyable,
Right.
And here we are. And here we are, on the table multiple times, getting poked and prodded, and doing so willingly. But it definitely sets up this dynamic where it's like, I have to go through all of this and you only have to go through that. Like,
and I get bombarded with the questions like, what? This is not fair.
Yes, I know. Exactly.
I think that actually helped my husband to see and open his eyes up a little bit more, and like you said, get more educated and everything, because there was a time when it was all on me, and I don't think he understood that burden that I was carrying, and the side eyes or the questions, and you better give that man a baby, and just all the nonsense. It's like he didn't understand how I was carrying that burden because all that pressure was falling on me. So even like you said, that emotional, getting tools to deal with the emotional baggage of that is just so important, because otherwise it's like you have to carry it all by yourself, and getting them to understand that is just so important.
Right, because also you brought up a good point too, because we're the ones that are usually getting the questions too, like, when are you going to, like, oh, do you have children? I mean, like, that's one of the first questions that people ask, and so and then, it's like, oh my goodness, what happens if you've had losses? Do you acknowledge the fact that you're a mom or whatever? I mean, and it's like, so all of these intrusive questions, again, that they don't have to deal with. So we're getting all of that, like, why are you waiting so long? You need to get started. And it's like, I already thought about that. Don't need to hear it again. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. That just, yes, you get it.
Yes, I do.
You get it. Oh my goodness. You talked about faith, and I consider myself very spiritual. Yeah, I'm also a little been in church all my life, but I'm more spiritual than anything. I love God, whatever.
Yes.
And I know on the Love Our podcast, you all were talking about, like, a lot of us, we raised up in church, and it was just like, pray everything away. And which I'm seeing a trend. It's trending in a different path now. But I truly do believe in the power of prayer. And I also believe that faith without works is dead. So I'm like, you got to pray, but you got to have faith, and you got to do the work behind it. And that's the Bible. Right. So you recently said your faith and feelings are not mutually exclusive. You can have both, which I love. How have you managed both your faith and your feelings through all of this?
Like you, I think I lean more towards spiritual than religious, which has helped me. And I think, quite honestly, when I hear people say pray about it is a trigger for me, because what it usually means, or how I have interpreted it means that I haven't prayed hard enough. I haven't prayed hard enough. I'm maybe it's not God's will, or I've done something to disappoint God, or, I didn't read some kind of scripture or something like that. And so, and I have lots of, wonderful friends who are, far more religious than I do. And so, and so we've had some conversations about that too. Yeah. And I know what they mean, but still at the same time, I think that because, it was like, if you're seeking help outside the Bible or outside the church, then something is wrong. And it's like, when you talk about faith without works is dead, it's like, well, if we are really thinking, if we're all in God's image, then, therapy is part of what God has ordained for us. And, the medical profession is something that God has ordained for us. These are resources that are there for us to use. And, and so this is how we've evolved. And so I'm glad to hear that it's, changing, because, and hearing, I think there's a lot of power from hearing our religious leaders say that, going to therapy is okay. And so, because, we know how much that the church is a big part of our community, and hearing that message, I think, does a lot for people in normalizing that going to therapy doesn't mean that you love God any less.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean it. And and I think once you recognize that, and I think you're able to realize, again, that things that don't seem to go together can coexist. And that's what I learned from grief. Okay, I can be happy, sad. Yeah, faith and feelings. Absolutely.
That's very, I love how you put that. Like, somebody said, boom, yes. Like, like, they can coexist. And like you said, the more we normalize it, I'm like, if I have to normalize it every single episode, I am going to, because I just know how much, therapy and people like you and other therapists that we've had on the show and my own personal therapist, group therapy. I recently tried that. I just know how much of a blessing and how I'm like, it's all connected. Like the Lord uses people that's where he gives different people different gifts. We go to the doctors for the same reason for our physical health. It's okay to have doctors for our mental wealth and our mental health. So I just love that you explained that, because I'm like, I'm here to help normalize that, because
we need it.
We need it, especially Black women. Woo,
we do. There's so much that I think we hold on to, because we also, I think, have a little bit of the superwoman kind of complex that it's like, oh, we've got to do it on our own, and there are a lot of people that rely on us, or that we're just kind of comfortable in that position. And it's like learning, no, we don't have to shoulder all of this. We can share the burden. It's okay.
We sure can. Oh, I love that. One of our last questions before we move to on a lighter note later, our little rapid round, but I wanted to just have you share. I feel like sometimes, especially when people, whether we know or not, we just want to say something nice, something comforting to people, and we don't always know what to say. I have personally found that I just tell people, feel what you feel, because especially if I haven't been through it, even if I have been through it, you might process it differently. And so I just try to tell people, feel what you feel and let them feel it. What are some encouraging or helpful things that we should or even shouldn't say to those who we know have experienced loss?
So first of all, I want to say it's hard to figure out the right thing. And I think you want to honor, first and foremost, it's coming from a loving place.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that you can say is, I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm here for you. Those words go a long way. What starts to get tricky is when people, kind of say, well, at least you were able to get pregnant, or, you weren't pregnant for that long, or, try to rush to some kind of solution or statement that feels really, that they intend to feel comforting, but that really is invalidating. Anything starting with at least, just don't even bother. What is just safest to say is, I'm here for you. Tell me how you feel. I can listen. And I think when people get to that point, and sometimes it's hard to listen to people's pain, it's hard to hold that. So that's when they get to, well, I've had women tell me, I know how you feel. And I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. Don't say that. I know where it's coming from. I know the good intention. Thank you for the intention, but no. And because you just don't know, you don't know my pain, especially if, and if you might have had a miscarriage or what have you, but your circumstances were very different. And so, just like other pregnancy losses have been different than mine. And so I don't tell someone who's experienced stillbirth, I know how you feel, because I don't. I haven't experienced pregnancy loss in that way. But what I say is, I'm so sorry. I can't even imagine what you're going through. Can you tell me how that feels for you? I can sit with you and listen. I might not always say what's right, but I'll still be here. And I think just kind of honoring and leaning into the fact that it might feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. You don't have to do it perfectly. We don't do it perfectly as therapists. So why would you? So it's all good. It's all good.
I love that. Hey, Portia, I'm so glad that you're on here. She said, yep, that's when I snap, when those at least comments start.
I know. See, even my body was like,
It's like, ooh, like, and Lauren looks like she has a question. Thank you all for your comments and your questions. They've been wonderful. She said, would you say something is better than avoiding? Oh, would you say saying something is better than avoiding?
Yes, please say something.
Okay.
Please say something.
That's a good question.
That is a wonderful question, because I've been the victim of people where I've actually kind of put out a little nugget saying, what, I got a baby shower invitation. And I literally said, I'm so sorry. I can't handle, shopping for a baby gift right now. And I can't attend the shower. Love you. Michael's going to handle it, my husband. And the person never responded to any of that. And so it's a perfect example of not saying anything is even more hurtful than just saying, wow, I'm so sorry. Yes. So if you know that there is a special date, like an angelversary, meaning when their baby passed, mark it on your calendar just like you would a birthday or what have you, and check in with that person because they're going to feel it, you know. And my tribe is so beautiful because, you know, my girls reach out to me like right around October, you know, 13th, which is Xavier's due date. And I know that her, you know, my other friend, hers is May, somewhere around May, Mother's Day. And so it's like those little things mean a lot, you know, and we might not always get it on the right day or what have you, but it's just like, you know, we know that people are thinking of us. And so it's like, hey, you know what, just how are you holding up? You know, thinking of you today, even if you don't know what to say, thinking of you is another favorite line of something that you could say to someone who's struggling with grief.
That's really good. Yeah, Portia said, I agree. Ignoring hurts. Yeah, when you said that, I was like, so y'all just not going to respond to her text? Like,
yeah.
I felt the awkwardness and I wasn't even on the text string.
Right. And that's the part, you know, again, as a therapist, I can appreciate where it comes from.
Yes.
You know, like that awkwardness that people feel internally. And what happens is people get so overwhelmed, they don't know what to say. So it's like, oh, I'm just not going to say anything at all. And so I just like to encourage people to lean into the discomfort. You don't have to, it doesn't have to look graceful. Nothing about this is graceful. So nothing about it's graceful, but at least showing some acknowledgement is healing. And that's really, you know, and that's the beauty of honoring the relationship that you have with that loved one who's struggling.
I love that. And this is why another reason why I appreciate and have come to love therapy so much, because even for someone like me who was like a recovering people pleaser, when it was a struggle for me to create my boundaries and to speak up for myself, or even like you just said, no, I can't come to the baby shower because I don't, like just saying that, like having a therapist, it's almost like an accountability, you know, not coach, it's beyond that, but it's like that, because then you can help validate my feelings and let me know that like I'm not crazy, even though the whole rest of the family might think, well, look at how she's acting different. It's like, no, I'm creating boundaries. Whereas therapists, I never would have learned that. I never would have had the courage to do and create the boundaries like I have if I didn't have people like you and other therapists. So thank you for saying that. I'm hoping that someone on here tonight or whenever they watch it feels empowered to say, no, I can create my own boundaries. I can feel what I want to feel. I can process this how I want to, and I can have life and thrive even if I'm going through infertility and loss.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly believe it, and I'm living proof that it's possible.
I love that. Oh, this has been just wonderful. I feel like we might need a part 2 in 2021. I'm like, oh my gosh, because there's so many directions I could have went with all of this, but this has truly been just like you said, it's gratitude and grief. They can live in the same. So while we grieve with you and while we celebrate Xavier, it's interesting that you said October 13th because that's my birthday. But now I will always I'm like, me and Xavier, we're going to celebrate Xavier every year now. We are going to celebrate him because it's a beautiful day. And so I grieve with you and we are here for you. But I also have gratitude for how you were so open and so transparent. Someone asked, did you find that you and your husband grieved differently? That's a great question.
Oh my goodness. And yes, we did. And I might get a little teary about it when I tell this story because I think it illustrates how differently partners can grieve. And so my husband is very stoic. He's a very sensitive man, even though he's this motorcycle man or whatever, he's still very sensitive. But he doesn't cry very often. And so when we lost Xavier, and it was probably about a year after we lost him, and I'd gone through some fertility treatments, and I don't know, I was sitting on the couch, he was sitting in the chair, and we were just replaying the events of that day. And I remember saying to him, like, you know, it just didn't seem like you were impacted by it. And listening to him talk about what it was like to watch me go in for the procedure to say goodbye to him. And he was like, Loree, I couldn't because I had to be strong for you. And that just really got me because I didn't realize, you know, how much I was holding on to. And, you know, and so he just intuitively moved into that space. And when I just heard him have his moment finally a year later, that's when I really, it kind of clicked for me in a different way. You know, again, even though I, you know, I'm a therapist, I should know that, you know, all of this, but to experience it, and I was like, wow, you know, I haven't been as, you know, I haven't been as sensitive to what that was like for him, because I'm like, you know, he has children, and I'm like, well, you know what, this isn't as important to him. I mean, all of these like ugly assumptions about what he was feeling or wasn't feeling. So yes, we grieved differently, and we still do. And just because we grieve differently doesn't mean he doesn't care. And his grief is not going to look like mine, you know, and mine isn't going to look like his, and that's okay.
That's powerful. Yeah, someone said that's powerful, and they also said they can't grieve because of trying to be strong. And that's so true, because like you said, you probably didn't even know how much of it you were carrying, and that he willingly would have took on, but you were processing your own, he was processing his feelings. It's almost like different love languages. It's like people grieve differently. And so like you said, you all were grieving differently, but it didn't mean that he didn't care any less. So I know that just touched my heart so much, and that's just what I love about you sharing your story, because you can be married and still have moments where you feel like the burden or overwhelmed, even though you know you're with someone that you love and someone's there beside you. But like, there's this inner strength that you also have to like tap into, because different things hit different people, and we all process things differently. So I love that you said that, so that, you know, obviously you were going through it together and he was there for you, but there were, I'm sure, times where you felt like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming.
It's definitely. So it was like, you know, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, I'm coming home from work and I'm going to bed or whatever. I mean, like, just, you know, it's all consuming. And so, and he was just so beautiful and supportive through all of that. So and that's what we talk about, you know, like when you get married and you say those vows for better or for worse. And it's like, when you're grieving, you're not bringing your best self. And, you know, and that's definitely one of the, you know, a trial that could really test your marriage. And so that's another, you know, source of pride that I have too, because for couples to go through pregnancy loss or losing a child, you know, they're much more vulnerable, and couples who are going through fertility struggles are also incredibly vulnerable. And, you know, and making sure that you're nurturing your relationship in the midst of all of this pain is one of the toughest things that you'll ever do. And it's rewarding. It's possible. You have to claim it. You have to claim it.
That is beautiful. Someone said they're so appreciative. Thank you, Mrs. K.L. Bugs. So appreciative for this live. We're so appreciative for you, Dr. Loree. I do want to ask, because you are a therapist and I love women of color therapists. You are in LA, correct?
Yes, I am.
So if someone wanted to reach out, I don't know how the rules are across the... So because I know everything's virtual right now. So
everything is virtual. So I do my therapy practice. So I can do that for clients in California. I do coaching as well for clients that are out of state, and also I work with women overseas who are dealing with infertility struggles. So there are ways to work together. It just depends on, you know, what your needs are and what fits for you.
Awesome. Because I always have women asking me, and you know, I'm kind of, I guess, thankful and privileged because I live in Atlanta, so access to those types of things is a little easier than it is in other places. So I always want to make sure I ask for the audience and for women who may be looking, because that's always a struggle. Like, it's hard for me to find someone. I'm like, I'm gonna bring on as many as I can.
Yes, definitely. I'm glad you're doing that.
So on a lighter note, we want to kind of just end on a lighter and refresh. And we've shed tears and we've heard your beautiful story, and we just want to just wind down, because it is Wives Wind Down. We've all had a week this week, and we're trying to close out, wrap up the year. So I just have a few fun questions so we can get to know Dr. Loree a little bit more. So are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Have you asked, and of course, ladies in the chat and fellas, if y'all out there, feel free to drop your answers in the chat as well, as you always do. Have you ever accidentally used your husband's toothbrush?
No, actually. No,
yes.
We have no, we haven't.
She's like, no, and I never plan on it.
We have separate electric toothbrushes, so that like never happens.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, we have them now, but there have been situations. I'll just say. Mm-hmm. This is always a controversial question, but toilet paper over or under?
Oh my goodness, over. There's no other way.
I see you. You see me.
You know.
There's no other way. Thank you.
There's no
Dr.
other
Loree.
way.
That's for you, Renita. Who's more of the morning person, you or him?
Oh, my husband. My husband.
All of our husbands.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Who's more likely to cuddle, you or him?
Me.
Oh.
Say me. Yeah. Me.
Who takes longer to get ready?
Me.
Oh, okay. All right. At least you're honest. Which TV wife most describes you? I have a few options. Claire Huxtable.
Okay.
The original Aunt Viv from Fresh Prince.
Oh.
Rochelle from Everybody Hates Chris. Or Rainbow from Blackish.
Oh, man. I would say that I have the attitude of Claire Huxtable.
Okay.
That comes out a little bit. So I'm going to have to go with Miss Huxtable.
I feel like we've had Claire. I think you might be the third one in a row that has answered Claire Huxtable. Somebody, Lauren said, good choice. Yes. I feel like I'm a mixture of a few of them, but yeah. I'm probably more like Rochelle, because Rochelle is just something else. She is something else. Which do you prefer, sunny tropical getaway or a cold cabin getaway?
Oh, tropical.
Well, I'm jealous because you're already in LA, so you all get to, even though the beaches sometimes are cold, but you're at the beach.
It's a little colder. Yeah, California beaches actually are not my favorite, and it's super cold. Yeah, so tropical, Caribbean, anywhere. Yeah.
Yes.
Hawaii. Yeah.
I'm laughing because Mrs. K.L. Buck said, I'm Rochelle, but I want to be Claire. I feel you. It's like, I want to channel more Claire, but I'm really Rochelle. I totally feel her. That's exactly how I would put it. Who's more likely to leave a pile of clothes around?
Me.
Me. Interesting. You're messy, eh?
I'm not messy. Well, it's a controlled mess. And there's a space in the closet, a little shelf that is all of that. And it's because I got more clothes than he does. So
that's what my husband says. You have more clothes than me.
Yeah.
Home cooked meal or takeout?
Oh, my husband's a good cook. Yes, so home cooked for sure. Yes. Y'all don't know. My husband is like low key, like home chef kind of caliber, and he loves doing so many things, by scratch. So I am so blessed in that department because he can cook up a storm. So.
Is he one of those he can just go in the kitchen like, oh, I have onions, and just whip up something?
No, but you know what? It's a little bit of that, and then also what he'll do is he likes to kind of study recipes actually, and that's kind of what gets his creative juices going, and then he'll kind of whip up something. So it's actually a little bit of both, and I'm a wonderful recipient of it.
I love it. I love that. Okay, and well, I may already know the answer to this, but who's the better listener, you or him?
I'm going to tell on myself. He is. He is. And I will say, because I will, I get emotional. And when I'm emotional about things, I don't hear things as well. And so, that's my humanness coming through. And so he'll be like looking at me, and I'm like, all right. But yeah, so he's actually a really good listener. So yeah.
I love how you phrased it. You said, when I get emotional, I don't really hear things really well. I'm like, like, got it, duly noted.
Okay.
I love how you put that. I'm like, clever.
Yeah, see, I'm channeling my inner Claire.
Yes.
Oh,
that was so a Claire line. Oh my gosh. I'm like, got it. I should have wrote that down. Oh my gosh. Well, Dr. Loree, this has been phenomenal. I can feel your spirit and your genuineness, and I'm just so thankful for your yes, and thankful how, like I said earlier, you've impacted me personally. I've never met you in person, but just I'm thankful. Sometimes social media gets on my nerves, but it's moments like these that I really appreciate it, because you truly impacted my life personally, just knowing that I'm not alone, and just hearing your story, and knowing that you are so gracious to share and give of yourself to so many people, despite what you're going through. It's just so courageous and admirable. So thank you. And before we close out, I want to, of course, have you tell everyone where they can find you and all of that, and your contact or whatnot, as well as what are you toasting to tonight?
Okay. So first of all, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I love your energy, and I'm just giving you a virtual hug, and sending virtual hugs to everybody out there. You know, and so you can find me. I'm here on Instagram. You can also, you can also reach me on my website, which is Dr. Loree Johnson. I have a couple of just guides to kind of keep people, you know, focused on self-care during this, you know, this journey. So if you want to check it out, it's the link in my bio on Instagram as well. And I'm toasting with a grip of water, by the way. I drink about a gallon of water a day.
That's fine. That's totally fine. I'm starting the new year. I might have to swap this out.
And I think what I'm toasting is just some of the lessons of 2020, which, let's face it, this is unlike anything. And as much as, you know, COVID has taken away, it's created space for beautiful connections, ways to reach people, ways to share, and to be of service, and to be in community with people, which is just so powerful and meaningful to me. So I'm really toasting this, you know, being in that space to share, because when I tell you guys I was in a darker place, and, you know, and I talk a little bit about that in my grief, it's like, and I'm not there yet. So I mean, anymore. So it just, I feel alive again. And so there's an excitement that even in a lot of this darkness of COVID, that I'm very thankful for. So.
That is beautiful. You feel alive again. And yeah, that's just beautiful, because someone might be in that dark place right now, but they see your story, they've heard your story, and they see you now. And for you to say, I'm alive, that is a testimony. So let's cheers to that.
Cheers.
Eye contact. Someone said, I just want to read a few comments before I close out. Miss Johnson said, Dr. Johnson, you're amazing. Single moms doing the most. Thank you, ladies. You are more than welcome. Great discussions. This was so good. So amazing. Koya said, thank you for sharing your story. So thankful. We are beyond thankful. I am forever grateful. And like I told you, I'm like, we might have to do a part 2 at some point next year. But thank you so much. And I love what you said about creating space, reaching people, sharing, and being in community. Like, that's perfect. To everyone who joined us tonight, thank you all so much. I'm sure you're going to send me your messages, and I will share them with Dr. Johnson, because I want her to know how powerful, and you all reach out to her directly at Dr. Loree Johnson and on her website. But thank you all so much for your support. Again, next week is our last week for the season. Well, we'll take a break, and then I'll be back the last week so we can prepare for the new year. So we only have like 2 more episodes left in the year, but of course we have that Christmas week. So we'll be back next week. And if you came in late, you absolutely must watch the replay, which will be available on my IGTV as soon as we hang up on here. And make sure you tell a friend, especially if you have someone that you know that may be encouraged by it. Don't be like overly, you know, trying to push stuff on them like some people do me, but instead just say, hey, saw this, thought you might, you know, like it, and and just leave it there. That's what I would prefer if it were me. Would you agree, Dr. Loree, or is that okay? All right.
That is perfectly okay. Yes, okay. Absolutely.
Because people are constantly sending me books and have you read this? And I'm like,
stay away from have you ever. Don't ever ask anybody, have you ever? No, because we've already thought about it. Trust me, we've already thought about it. Yeah. So.
Thank you, Dr. Loree, for saying that. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Loree. So yes,
or you can direct them to my account and I'll tell them what to say. So
yes, listen, I'm like, let me sign up with Dr. Loree across to LA. Oh Lord. I'm like, I'll have Dr. Loree speak on my behalf. Thank you.
There you go.
But no, thank you so much. Your story was just so powerful. And I just thank you for the tips and the encouragement that you shared. And I know that women have been empowered tonight. And thank you all for tuning in. Again, I will be here next Wednesday. And if you're looking to do this again and you feel like it was empowering and fun and enlightening, join me every Wednesday for Wives Wind Down. I'll be here. And again, the replay will be available. So share, tell a friend, tell a girlfriend. And thank you all so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the week. And thank you again, Dr. Loree.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Yes. Take care, you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.